This clip is from the Boundary Riders podcast, and if you do enjoy this, then make sure to check out the full episode out every single Wednesday morning on YouTube and Spotify. Let's move to the best recruits of the year so far. I'll go through this pretty quickly. Me and you both went over the week. Channel 7 actually posted their top 10 recruits of the year so far. They went with number 1, Matt Kennedy, number 2, Bailey Smith, 3, Jack McRae, 4, John Noble, 5, Josh Battle, 6, Alex Neil-Bullen, 7, Daniel Rioli, 8, James Peatling, 9, Nick Haynes, and 10 with Harry Perryman. So, first of all, I think Matt Kennedy's had a great year. I think that's pretty safe to say. Bailey Smith's in Brownlow form.
Yeah.
How the fuck is he not number 1?
At the moment, he's probably... in the last 2 weeks with Nick Dacos being underdone, seems like, I think he's leading it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's leading the Brownlow, Bailey Smith. So...
Yeah, I don't know how the hell they put... I get that Matt Kennedy's had a very good year. He's probably had a career best year. But, I mean, he's not in Brownlow form.
No.
Anyway, so I'll give you my top 10 first, and then I'll name yours. So, my top 10 best recruits of the year so far are Bailey Smith, number 1. Number 2, Matt Kennedy. Number 3, Josh Battle. 4, John Noble. 5, Neil Bullen. 6, Daniel Rioli. 7, Nick Haynes. 8, Tom Barrass. 9, Luke Parker. And 10, Jack McRae. So pretty similar top. We've got the same. 2 of the top 3 is the same. Jack McRae for me has dropped down to about 10. I think he's had a good year, but I don't think he's been better than those 9 other players, in my opinion.
I think he started well, but the last couple of weeks he's been just around the mark. He hasn't done anything brilliantly.
Yeah.
He's had, I think, 1 good game in the past 5 weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, he's always been an accumulator, but his best is when he's got clearances and getting the ball forward. And for Saints, it's always hard for them as well, but he hasn't really been doing that ball. He hasn't even been in his ball winning best, let alone his best.
To be honest, I think it was the game against half the game against Port Adelaide. He just went down in my opinion. That game when they hit their peak, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, as a whole, though, they have been pretty down for a lot of the last month or so. I'm surprised that players like Tom Barrass or Luke Parker didn't get into their top 10 either. I think Luke Parker, he may not have the career best numbers or whatever, but I think he's been really good for North Melbourne's leadership this year. He's definitely given them something in the midfield and up forward. And I think he's been their best recruit so far.
That's why they've only won 2 games.
Well, he has been their best recruit, I think, out of the 3.
The amount of recruits they've got, of course he is.
I think he has.
Over Caleb Daniel and who was the other one?
Jack Darling.
Well, yeah, of course he is.
I just think that Luke Parker's had a very underrated year so far. I think he's definitely done some good things, and I think that he's definitely helped out.
I think if they were winning as much as what people were expecting, they would have taken more notice of it.
Yeah.
I think if they were, say, like 4 or 5 wins already this season, maybe they feel like Luke Parker, that's the recruit of the year, or close to.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, I mean they've been close in a couple of games too, and I mean I know North Melbourne probably be like, shut the fuck up, we haven't won any games, that's what we're here for now.
Well, that's what the media thinks. Like, they've got close to a few games. Like, yeah, that was like they're 6 years into a rebuild. Where's the turn?
Yeah, Richmond nearly beat them on the weekend.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I personally think the North Melbourne can rebound. I think they'll have a very good end to the second half of the season. But I think they can get. I mean, what's the last few years they've got? Like 3 or 4 wins. I think they can go to 5 or 6.
Well, I'll ask you a question. Do they get out of the bottom 4?
No, but I think the reason for that is there's the top 14 teams, top 15 teams are much better than the bottom 4 teams. There is a huge. I think it goes right now. I'm thinking St Kilda are going to finish in the bottom 4 with Richmond. I honestly think Richmond can finish in front of St Kilda at this stage, but we'll get to that in a minute. We may get that into a future episode. I think Richmond are better than them, but I think it will go, St Kilda, Richmond, North Melbourne, West Coast. I think that's the bottom 4, and I think the rest of the teams in the competition are a class above. Yeah. Even Essendon, who are probably around that part, around 13, 14. I think 14.
They've won enough games to realise that they can just have that day that it all clicks. Like we've seen so far.
Yeah, and I think we've obviously seen Melbourne the last couple of weeks be really good.
Yeah,
so they can.
Like they've turned it.
Sydney, I mean, if they had their best team, if they had better players in, if they had Errol Goulden, Cal Mills, Tom Papley, a couple of others, I think they would be a lot better off where they are. I don't think they'd be very much high. I think they'd probably be around 8.
I think they'd win maybe 2, maybe even 3 of their games that they've lost.
Yeah, I think they were saying last week, they were saying that Sydney's expected win-loss ratio at this stage would be 5 and 4. So it should be a lot better off. But I do think that, if Sydney get players like Mills should be back either this week or next week, And then they've got a couple of others potentially coming back around 15, 16, round whatever.
After the bye,
Yeah, around after the bye. They can get a couple of wins. So I think that's probably another team that pushes up. Like, what other... like, the bottom four. I don't think North Melbourne will finish out the bottom four, but I do think they can end their season strongly and probably finish around 15th.
Yeah.
But... yeah, that's just me anyway. But back onto the recruits. Another one as well, Nick Haynes as well. I think there's been very, very poor start, but he's definitely came on in the last few weeks and shown why, like, he was an All-Australian player, why he's one of the most highest paid players in the game only a few years ago. So he's been a good pickup for Carlton. Other than that, I think John Noble, really underrated season so far. I know some people would say he's been rated pretty highly, but I think he's been better than fucking Dan Houston.
Oh, 1,000%. And it's amazing to think that it happened like that. But
yeah, I mean, basically he was traded out for Dan Houston, if you think about it. I mean, he was traded to the Gold Coast. Port Adelaide got rid of him but I mean, you think about it, they replaced John Noble with Dan Houston, and Noble's had a better year. So I think he's had a very underrated year so far.
Yeah.
I think let's have a look at a couple of players that you had different to me. I will say though, James Peatling's had a good year, but I don't think he's been in the top 10. I mean, I've liked James Peatling. I don't mind him. He's had a couple of good tagging roles. You've put him at 9th. I just don't think he's been exceptional. I don't think he's even been top 10 worthy. Like, I'd put him around 12 or 13.
Yeah, I think it's the fact is that the Crows have been so good that they're like, oh, well, they've brought in those players, they have to be pretty good recruits. But I can see why people think that he's not there.
Yeah. And one as well, you've put one player right at the end. I don't know if this was just Port bias, but Joe Richards. Is there a reason why you want to put him there?
Because the fact is that when he's been in the team, I think he's done more team effort than any of the bloody other players in that team.
Yeah.
In some games. I think the game against Hawthorn, he set the tone so early in that game. He's showed more bloody pressure than any bloody Port player in
that forward line.
And when it's such a young player, for us to take a huge punt on it, like, let's be honest, we got rid of him for Dan Houston. I'll be honest with you.
I mean, you got Jack Lukosius as well.
Well, he's been injured since round 3.
Yeah, so hard.
But
apparently.
I think that, to be honest, Joe Richards has probably played better than Dan Houston.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. So your top 10 was Smith at number 1, Kennedy 2, Noble 3, Battle 4, Neil Bullen 5, Rioli 6, McRae 7, Haynes 8, Peatling 9, and Joe Richards 10. So you've only got 2 different to me. I put Barras and Parker in. You put Peatling and Richards in. So basically the last... I put Barras at 8. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind your list either. Joe Richards, I do... when I've seen Port Adelaide play this year, he has given something. Yeah, so... but I think Dan Houston's definitely a disappointment.
Who do you think the worst recruit's been? Like, I'm not going to say like Elliot Himmelberg, who has to play the game. I mean, a player that's been playing most of the game.
I mean, even Dan Houston hasn't played a lot of. I mean, he's played more than half. I mean, you don't. I don't want everyone to say Dan Houston, but I mean, out of the players who were expected to do great things, he's probably up there as like the most disappointing. I wouldn't say the worst, because I mean that makes it sound so bad, but he has been pretty disappointing so far. He hasn't had that full on. Because he even had it. Well, I would be interested to see how many disposals he's averaging this year or meters gained, because that was such a big attribute he had at Port. Was his distribution around the ground, but also his you'd have 25 a game, and he would give you positional advantage on the field.
Yeah.
So, have you got a choice of what you'd say is like?
Isaac Cumming hasn't really. I think he's trying to establish his role in that Crows side. I think he's done a couple good things, but I think that's he's had a. I think he's had a pretty underwhelming season so far. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's fair.
I think Dan Houston's pretty close to it as well. But I think it showed in games like against Port, the game he played a couple of weeks ago, why they got him and how good he can be.
Yeah. But, I mean, looking at it, I just had a look now. He's only averaging 18 touches a game, which isn't a lot for him. His marks is pretty low for him with only 3.7, so basically 4 a game. His best game so far this year, I think, was against Port Adelaide. But looking at his career stats, he's averaged around 20.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's not that far off, but I mean, we could. I'm not going to go through a deep dive of Dan Houston's stats, but it just looks like that he's had he hasn't had that impact.
Yeah, the impact that maybe it's the fact is he's playing. Well, let's be honest. I'm a Port supporter, and I'll say it. He's playing with more stars than he did at Port in the last couple of years. Really.
Yeah, he's probably got more competition.
Yeah,
it's probably the
like when you got to think you're playing with like both the Dacos brothers. You're playing with Maynard and Moore.
Quaynor as well.
Quaynor, I'm talking about, more in the back line than anything.
Well, Quaynor's in the back line.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. The people around the back line. I'm talking about the midfielders.
Yeah.
But I think he's actually come into the midfield the last couple of weeks for.
The Pies.
I've seen him in a few CPAs so far. So I think maybe even that's trying to figure out how to use him through the midfield as well. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So that's pretty much all we got for that, guys. Make sure to let us know down below your best recruit of the year or your most disappointing.